What she said after escaping shocked the entire town. On a cold October morning, while fog still curled around the sidewalks like fingers of a ghost, Claire Morrow appeared, barefoot, bruised and trembling. Her skin was pale as linen. Her arms clutched her sides like she was holding herself together. She didn't speak at first. Just stumbled into the Edgewood diner with a look so hollow, it silenced everyone inside. Forks froze in midair. Coffee mugs hung beneath stunned lips. Conversations halted. Claire didn't need to scream. Her silence carried more weight than 1,000 cries for help. Her hair, matted and disheveled, hung around her face like curtains shielding old pain. Her legs shook beneath her, but somehow she stayed upright. She didn't ask for food. She didn't beg for water. Instead, she stepped into the center of the room and whispered words no one in Wellington Falls ever expected to hear again. "I've been missing for 20 years. You could have heard a pin drop." Someone gasped. A waitress dropped a tray of hash browns. The man in the corner booth, the retired sheriff, Bill Sanders, slowly stood up, eyebrows furrowed, mouth opening but unable to form a response. Claire looked around the room as if trying to decide whether this was real. As if her body was back in town but her mind hadn't caught up yet. Then, louder, with more certainty than before, she said it. "The man who took me still lives here. Just 2 blocks away." The words hit like thunder. Customers looked at each other in disbelief, hoping they misheard. But they hadn't. Claire was here. Alive. Speaking. And accusing someone in this very town, this tiny place they all considered safe, of stealing 2 decades of her life. Wellington Falls wasn't the sort of community known for drama. With a population of just over 3,000, it was the type of place where neighbors borrowed sugar, kids rode bikes after dark, and folks waved at strangers as if they were long-lost cousins. Crime was rare. Tragedy even rarer. But that morning shattered the illusion of safety. The girl who vanished in 1983, the one they held candlelight vigils for, prayed over, mourned quietly when the searches stopped, was standing in front of them. And she was telling them the devil had never left. What made her revelation even harder to process wasn't just that she had returned. It was who she said had done it. The name she spoke was one every resident knew. Someone whose lawn was always trimmed. Who helped shovel driveways after snowstorms. Who fixed broken screen doors for free and told jokes at the 4th of July cookout. He wasn't a stranger. He was one of them. Before we go further, if you find stories like this as haunting and unforgettable as the people of Wellington Falls did, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Every week, we uncover the darkest corners of small towns, hidden behind smiles and neatly trimmed hedges. You won't want to miss what comes next. The police were called within minutes. Claire refused to sit down until she was sure someone believed her. Her voice cracked, but her eyes were steady. She spoke like someone who had waited 20 years to be heard. Every word she said was precise. Each detail was soaked in memory. The color of the basement walls. The smell of old leather. The sound of footsteps over her head at night. Still, not everyone accepted it right away. How could they? The man she named had attended town meetings, volunteered at the library, hosted barbecues. No one ever suspected a thing. But as the truth began to unravel, it became harder and harder to deny. By noon the whole town knew. Mothers pulled their children closer. Retirees peered out their windows, wondering how long they had been living next to a monster. Teenagers whispered her name in hushed tones, unsure whether to feel fear or awe. The grocery store cleared out early. No one felt like shopping. The post office closed before its usual time. Church bells rang out that evening, not to mark the hour, but in mourning for a lie that had lived too long. By sunset, half of Wellington Falls was in tears. The other half, still shaking their heads, trapped between disbelief and guilt. Guilt that they hadn't seen it. That maybe they could have. That perhaps if they'd asked one more question, this could have ended sooner. One elderly man said he remembered her. Said he used to see Claire walk past his house every Friday afternoon in the summer of '83. She always smiled, he murmured. Always waved. Now she barely spoke. The diner never closed that night. Officers came. Medics arrived. Reporters tried to sneak photos but were pushed back. Still, none of them captured the weight of what had happened that day. Because this wasn't just a survivor's return. It was a reckoning. And for Wellington Falls, it marked the end of innocence. Claire's story was just beginning, but the town's nightmare had already begun.
The summer of 1983 was the kind that lingered in memory: soft sunlight, lemonade on porches, baseball on radios. In Wellington Falls, the days stretched long and lazy, and everyone believed life would always be that way. Peaceful. Predictable. Safe. Claire Morrow had just turned 18. She was thoughtful, quiet, and always had a book in her bag. Her smile was the kind that made strangers pause for a second look, not because she was loud or flashy, but because she carried a kind of warmth that lit up a room without asking for attention. That summer, she worked weekends at Bloom and Vine, the little flower shop on Eastwood Street. She liked the quiet there, the way the air smelled of fresh petals and damp earth. She'd arrange bouquets while humming songs her mother played on the piano. Life was simple. Steady. Good. Claire had just received her acceptance letter from Oregon State University. Her parents celebrated with root beer floats and a grilled dinner in the backyard. Her younger brother Max made a hand-drawn card with a big red C for college girl. She kept it tucked in her journal. That final week of June, everything still felt normal. Until the night she disappeared. On Friday, June 17th, Claire closed up shop a little after 8 p.m. The streets were still bathed in golden light. She took her usual shortcut home, winding through a wooded path that curved behind the elementary school and cut through the edge of the Denner property. She never made it back. Her parents waited. At first, they thought maybe she'd gone to a friend's house, or lost track of time. But as the hours dragged on, panic crept in like a shadow. Max fell asleep on the couch, clutching a flashlight. By dawn, they had called the police. The town rallied. Flyers were printed. Neighbors walked the trails with dogs, calling her name into the trees. Volunteers combed the creek behind the woods. Local businesses taped posters to windows. "Have you seen Claire Morrow?" For weeks, they searched. For months, they hoped. But no sign ever came. No clothing. No backpack. Nothing. It was as if Claire had vanished into the air itself. Slowly, Wellington Falls began to grieve. People whispered quietly, then stopped speaking at all. Her parents stopped putting up decorations that fall. The flowers outside the shop wilted. Max kept setting the dinner table for 4 instead of 3. Her room stayed untouched for years. Over time, the search parties thinned out. New families moved in. The posters faded. And the trail went cold. Some said she ran away. That maybe she cracked under pressure, or fell in love with a boy no one knew about. Others thought she met the wrong person while hitchhiking or that she had drowned in the river and her body was never found. But none of that was true. The truth was far worse. Just 5 houses away from the Morrow residence, on Cedar Hollow Drive, a man named Paul Denner had quietly taken up residence a few months before Claire disappeared. He rented a modest gray house, kept to himself, and opened a locksmith service in his garage. People thought he was a godsend, kind, affordable, always on time. He helped older neighbors open jammed windows. Replaced rusty deadbolts. Shared cookies at church potlucks. Never once raised suspicion. Paul liked living where no one asked questions. Where everyone smiled and waved and assumed the best. But while the town looked forward, Paul watched the past. More specifically, he watched Claire. He never spoke to her. Never made a move in public. But every day, from the corner of his garage, he observed. What time she left for work. When she returned. Which shortcut she took through the woods. He studied her like a puzzle. One he planned to steal piece by piece. The night of June 17th wasn't random. He had been preparing. He knew the timing, the route, even that her parents would be out late at a community fundraiser. As Claire entered the wooded path, she noticed a flicker of movement ahead. A man's silhouette near the bend. But before she could turn, a strong hand clamped over her mouth, dragging her into the underbrush. No one heard her muffled scream. No one saw her get shoved into the back of a van parked in the dark clearing behind Denner's property, an area so forgotten even the mailman didn't venture near it. The van doors slammed shut. And like that, Claire was gone. Inside his house, beneath a trapdoor hidden behind a false wall in the basement, Paul had prepared a room. A mattress on the floor. Chains. A single light bulb that buzzed when it flickered on. There were no windows. No clocks. No air that didn't smell like cement and mold. Claire woke up there, dizzy from whatever he'd used to knock her out. Her wrists hurt. Her throat burned. The room was silent except for her ragged breath and a steady drip from a leaking pipe. Paul stood in the corner. "You're safe now," he said. "Nobody's going to hurt you anymore." She screamed anyway. Over the next weeks, Claire tried to escape reality. She told herself this was a nightmare, that someone would find her. That it couldn't last. But it did. Time blurred. Paul controlled every moment. When she ate. When she could speak. When she could sleep. At first, he kept her locked up around the clock. But as the months turned into years, he grew comfortable. Complacent. She learned how to survive. Every sound became a clue. Every change in his routine gave her hope. But she never forgot the life she had. Oregon State. Her family. The smell of lilacs in the flower shop. Her brother's laugh. The card with the big red C. She whispered their names in the dark, refusing to let go. Outside, the world kept spinning. New houses were built. Roads repaved. People grew older. Claire stayed exactly the same, lost in time beneath the surface of a town that never imagined the horror sleeping 5 doors down. And Paul kept living among them. Mowing his lawn. Smiling in church. Offering to fix locks with hands that had built a prison. And no one ever looked closer. Claire's reality narrowed into a shadowed box. The basement smelled like damp wood and rust. The air was always cold, heavy, and unmoving. Light came from a single yellow bulb that buzzed overhead, flickering sometimes, like it too was struggling to survive. Her room had no windows. No calendar. No clocks. Only silence, broken by footsteps overhead or the sound of a car door outside. Her mattress sagged in the middle, stained and thin. In the corner, a cracked bucket served as her toilet. Paul told her it was for her own good. That the world was too cruel for someone like her. That she had been chosen, because he saw what no one else did, her real potential. Her light. He smiled when he said these things. And that made them even more terrifying. He claimed he was protecting her. That outside forces would never understand their bond. He'd kneel beside her, stroke her hair, and whisper, "You're safe now, Claire. You don't have to pretend anymore." She never responded. Not because she agreed. But because silence was the only power she had left. In the early years, she scratched lines into the wall with a splintered nail. 5 for every week. Circles for full months. She tried to mark seasons, remembering the rhythm of weather and holidays. Then one day, Paul walked in with a paintbrush and covered everything. He said it made the room look messy. Claire stopped keeping track after that. Some days, he brought her books, old, tattered paperbacks missing covers. She read them slowly, memorizing entire pages, treating each story like a secret escape route. Other times, he brought nothing at all. No food. No water. No words. Those were the worst. He would disappear for entire days, leaving her in darkness, the bulb off, the door locked from above. She'd lie on the mattress, curled up, counting heartbeats, wondering if this was it, if this time he had left for good. But he always came back. And every time, she'd have to start over, pretend not to cry, pretend not to hope, pretend not to remember her life before. Outside, Paul blended in perfectly. He trimmed hedges on Sundays. Delivered extra keys to elderly neighbors. Smiled at children on their way to school. His house was ordinary. His voice never raised. He was, in every visible way, just another polite man in a quiet town. No one ever questioned him. No one ever wondered what was behind the door beneath the stairs. Claire tried to escape once. In her 6th year underground, he forgot to lock the second latch. She waited until he went outside to rake leaves. Then, heart pounding, she crept up the steps, testing each one for sound. The door creaked when she pushed it. But she made it out. Her bare feet hit the kitchen tile. The window glowed with daylight. The back door was right there. She ran. But he heard her. He caught her halfway across the yard, tackled her into the grass. She screamed once. Just once. He didn't hit her. He didn't even raise his voice. Instead, he looked at her like she had broken his heart. Next time, he said softly, "I won't bring you back alive." Then he dragged her inside, silent and calm, as if it were nothing more than spilled milk to clean up. After that, she stopped trying. On the outside, anyway. But something inside her refused to give up. She stopped crying at night. Instead, she studied. She memorized every creak in the floorboards above her head. The sound of his boots on the stairs. The click of each lock. She knew the pattern of his footsteps. Knew the hour he left for groceries. Knew how long it took him to return. He thought she was broken. But she was learning. Every quiet moment became a lesson. Every new insult or strange kindness was stored away, not just as memory, but as data. He had weaknesses. Blind spots. Habits. Over time, he grew sloppier. Sometimes, he forgot to bolt the trapdoor for hours. Once, he left a half-used lighter near the mattress. She didn't use it, but she remembered where it was. Every oversight added another crack to the illusion he had built. The longer he believed she had surrendered, the closer she came to reclaiming her strength. Meanwhile, Wellington Falls went on, unaware. New mayors were elected. A grocery store burned down and was rebuilt. The Edgewood Diner changed owners twice. Kids who were toddlers when she vanished had grown up and moved away. And Paul? He got older. He started limping. Sometimes he coughed for minutes at a time. His hands weren't as steady. He began missing town meetings. He closed the locksmith shop in '97 but told people it was because he wanted to enjoy life. In reality, he just didn't want strangers near the house anymore. Especially the garage. The town still trusted him. Said he was quiet, but good. A few noticed he didn't invite people over anymore, but no one pried. In a place like Wellington Falls, people respected privacy more than they questioned patterns. Claire kept waiting. 1 year passed. The air outside struck Claire like ice. Her lungs burned, legs buckled, but her mind kept screaming, "Go." She climbed those wooden stairs like a soldier escaping a battlefield. Her fingers trembled as they gripped the edge of the trapdoor. For the first time in years, the lock above hadn't clicked shut. Paul had stumbled home that evening smelling of liquor. She heard classic movies playing from his television. Heard laughter, his, slurred and careless. Then, silence. Then, snoring. A quiet snore, steady and deep. Claire moved slowly at first. She listened for creaks. Memorized which boards groaned. Her hands slid across the floor like whispers, her breathing shallow. She tiptoed through the hallway, past his coat still hanging by the door, past photographs on the wall. One even showed him shaking hands with the mayor at a town picnic. She reached the doorknob. It turned. No resistance. When the door opened, the night hit her full in the face. Cold, sharp, alive. And she ran. Gravel tore into her soles, but she didn't slow. Bare feet slapped the asphalt. A porch light clicked on 2 houses over. She ducked behind bushes. Sprinklers activated across someone's lawn, soaking her gown. Still, she kept running. She passed empty storefronts, darkened gas stations, and the quiet outline of the church where she once attended Sunday school. Then, finally, the glow of neon. Edgewood Diner. Open 24 hours. She burst through the entrance, drenched and shaking. Her arms were scratched. Knees bleeding. Face pale as snow. A man behind the counter dropped his spatula. "Miss, do you need help?" Claire collapsed onto the stool nearest the register. She couldn't find words. She couldn't believe she was real. That this was real. The man brought her water. She drank like she'd been crawling through a desert. "What's your name?" "Claire," she rasped. "Claire Morrow." Silence. His eyebrows lifted slowly. "Claire, as in?" She nodded once. Tears streamed down her cheeks. Then, steadying herself, she whispered the name no one would expect. "Paul Denner." The cook froze. His hands trembled. The glass slipped from his grip and shattered across the floor. Claire didn't flinch. She was too numb. The man backed toward the phone. "Stay right here. Don't move." 20 minutes later, the entire police department of Wellington Falls surrounded Paul Denner's home. Blue lights painted the neighborhood in pulsing fear. Dogs barked. Curious faces peered from behind curtains. Officers broke down the front door. The inside was disturbingly clean. A vacuum stood upright. The sink was spotless. Then, one cop found the latch beneath the stairs. It led downward, steep and narrow. And what they found below shocked even the oldest officers. The basement was cold. Claustrophobic. But filled with unmistakable signs: a mattress with faded sheets, scraps of paper covered in handwriting, hairbrushes, shoes that no longer fit, and one small stuffed bear missing. Its left ear. Claire's belongings. Confirmed. Her diary sat on a shelf above the bed. The name, Claire Morrow, was scrawled in large, looping letters on the inside cover. No doubt remained. But Paul? Nowhere in sight. A man who had never traveled outside the state. A man who walked with a limp. Who waved at every neighbor and handed out candy every Halloween. Who led the church's charity fundraisers. Gone. Vanished. The cops searched the house. They searched his car, his shed, even the woods nearby. No tracks. No notes. Just an open back door swinging in the wind. Claire was taken to the hospital. Her vitals were weak but stable. A nurse wept while checking her pulse. When detectives asked questions, she answered calmly. She remembered everything. "He brought me a Christmas ornament every year," she said once, voice flat. "Even though I never had a tree." Another time, he used to hum the same song while cooking. Something from the 50s. "I still hear it in my dreams." When asked why she never tried escaping earlier, she said, "Because I knew if I failed again, he'd bury me instead of locking the door." The town reeled. No one believed it at first. Paul? No, not possible. He helped fix our roof for free. He gave my kid a bike one summer. The newspaper ran the headline the next morning. Captor hid in plain sight for 2 decades, Wellington Falls in shock. Social workers offered Claire shelter, therapy, everything they could. But she kept asking for one thing. Is he still out there? No one had an answer. Back at Paul's house, officers found something odd, an old suitcase in the attic. Inside, cash, fake IDs, a wig, maps with routes traced in red pen. He had prepared. He'd always known this day might come. They suspected he left within minutes of Claire's escape. Maybe even watched from down the street as the cruiser rolled up. Some believed he never went far. Others were sure he had crossed state lines that night. A massive manhunt was launched. His face was shown on national television. Tip lines rang non-stop. Rumors poured in from neighboring towns. But not a single confirmed sighting. It was as if he vanished off the face of the earth. And that was when the real fear began. Not just for Claire, but for everyone who had trusted him. The barber who cut his hair. The widow who shared dinners with him. The children who knocked on his door every Halloween. The monster wasn't a stranger hiding in the woods. He was next door. He'd mowed lawns. Given rides. Laughed during potlucks. And now, he was gone. Somewhere. Watching. Maybe. Maybe not. Claire's survival was a miracle. But Paul's escape. That was the nightmare Wellington Falls would never wake from. Paul Denner was captured on a rainy Thursday evening. An officer noticed a flickering flashlight behind the cracked shutter of a dilapidated storage facility near Cascade Highway. The structure had been condemned years earlier, used now only by wildlife and vagrants. Inside, curled beneath a tarp and an old mattress, lay Paul. His eyes were sunken. Clothes damp. He smelled like mildew and engine oil. When they drew their weapons, he raised both hands slowly. He didn't run. Didn't speak, until the cuffs were tightened and he was led to the cruiser. She wasn't supposed to get out, he muttered, staring straight ahead. No anger. Just disbelief. Authorities searched the unit. No weapons. Only canned food, fake documents, and photographs, some recent, others decades old. In one corner was a sketchbook filled with drawings of Claire. Most were childlike. Disturbing. News of the arrest reached Wellington Falls within the hour. People locked doors. Lights stayed on through the night. The unease remained even though the threat was technically over. The courtroom was packed during the trial. Reporters lined the hallway. Victims' rights advocates came from as far as Seattle. Claire arrived with a therapist and her brother Max. Her gaze never left Paul as the charges were read aloud. Kidnapping. False imprisonment. Assault. Psychological torture. Dozens of counts. She never cried during proceedings. She sat tall, jaw set. When asked to testify, Claire stood without hesitation. The courtroom fell silent as she approached the stand. She spoke with remarkable calm. I remember the sound of keys. Different ones for each lock. I remember counting meals to know what day it was. I remember pretending to be someone else, so I wouldn't break. She paused. But I didn't break. Paul never looked at her. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. A life sentence. No possibility of parole. As he was led away, Claire watched in silence. No anger on her face, only relief. But after the gavel dropped, reality didn't magically improve. Freedom, Claire learned, wasn't instant joy. Some mornings she couldn't rise. Crowds terrified her. Mirrors reminded her of years stolen. The smell of musty basements made her tremble. Yet every small moment mattered, choosing her own food, reading a newspaper, walking alone beneath trees without fear. She moved into a quiet cottage near the town library. The community helped renovate it. Volunteers donated furniture, books, warm blankets. A retired teacher left a note on her porch every week, filled with words of encouragement. Even the postman gave her space when needed. People cared. They just didn't always know how to show it. At first, she avoided public gatherings. The noise. The stares. The weight of expectation. But time, in small doses, brought courage. 6 months after her return, Claire appeared at a Wellington Falls town meeting. The auditorium buzzed with nervous energy when she walked in. She didn't plan to speak, but when the mayor paused to reflect on resilience, Claire rose from the third row and approached the podium. Her hands shook slightly as she adjusted the microphone. "My name is Claire Morrow," she said softly. Everyone went still. "I know many of you watched me grow up. I was the girl who loved flowers. Who talked too fast and ran barefoot in the rain." A faint smile touched her lips. That girl was taken. Her expression changed, stronger now. "But she's back." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Someone sniffled. "He stole 20 years, she continued, voice gaining strength. "But I still have years left, and I'll use them. Not to hide. Not to hate. But to help." The entire hall stood. Even the mayor cried. After that night, Claire began sharing her story in small rooms. Church basements. Community centers. High schools. Not to scare, but to teach. "Be aware," she would say. "Trust your instincts. Don't silence that voice inside." She never asked for sympathy. Only understanding. She planted a garden behind her cottage. Roses. Lavender. Daisies. Each bloom marked a victory, one more step toward reclaiming what was hers. Max visited every Sunday. They talked about silly things, TV shows, pie recipes, his awkward dating life. Laughter returned, slowly but surely. Some days were hard. Nightmares came. But the difference now? She wasn't alone. The town, once shaken, found purpose in protecting its own. Neighborhood watches formed. Mental health resources expanded. Children were taught not just stranger danger, but how to speak up, even when no one wants to listen. Claire's story didn't just change her, it shifted everything. People looked harder. Asked questions. Paid attention. They no longer assumed quiet meant kind. Or familiar meant safe. In time, Wellington Falls became more than a town. It became a family. A place that refused to forget the pain, but chose to learn from it. And Claire? She thrived in her own quiet way. She started a support group for trauma survivors. Taught self-defense workshops. Shared poetry online under a pen name. Some recognized her. Most didn't. But it didn't matter. She wasn't hiding anymore. And she never stopped reminding people of one truth. Sometimes monsters live next door. But so do heroes. And as the wind moved through the roses in her backyard, and the sunset spilled gold across her porch, Claire sat in peace, alive, whole, and finally free.